Greetings, everybody, and welcome to Ugly, Irresponsible, and Childish, where two industry marketing vets talk about the unrelenting pursuit of creativity and the people and work that either celebrates or suffocates it. My name is Jeremy Baca, one of your hosts.
My name is Mark Levy, one of your hosts, and as you can see, I'm here poolside down in beautiful Florida. It's like the perfect time of year to be here. It's like mid 80s. The humidity isn't crazy yet. My in-laws just put in a pool, so
Oh, wow.
we're living the life at least for another week.
Dude,
So
that's
with
amazing. Well, I'm still here in the land of tarantulas and scorpions, and I'm just talking about the people. Not even, uh, trashy Las Vegas, Sin City, whatever you would call it. But it's good to see you, my dude.
Good to see you too, man. Good to see you too. What's been going on? Anything fun? Anything interesting?
Well, I think we should. I think it's fair to reveal to our audience what our podcast ultimately resulted in terms of an perhaps one of the biggest plays yet for our work. Do you think that's fair?
Yeah, absolutely. Go for it.
Well, why don't you do it, brother?
All right. Well, thanks to all of you, our loyal listeners and viewers. Uh, the Joe Esterhaus sessions, which they're now lovingly called, have really blowed up. It's doubled our viewership, which is amazing that we get to speak to more people, and the media results that we've gotten for just having Joe on the podcast. I mean, uh, who did we have so far? We just did, or rather, Joe just did an interview with Interview Magazine, the legendary publication out of New York. We were in the Guardian, which has an amazing global audience. What else? What else has been on?
IndieWire.
IndieWire, another great publication that I actually read. And then the big one, by the time you see this, it will likely have already aired. Mr. Esterhaus is being interviewed by, regardless of what you think of his politics, the king of podcasting, Joe Rogan. And we hope to get, some more viewers and listeners headed our way for that. So just exciting times over here at Ugly, Irresponsible, and Childish Industries. We're rocking. And again, this is all about you guys. So thank you again so much for liking, for sharing, for subscribing, for passing on to your friends. Greatly appreciated.
Well, and I have to thank you, dude, because I remember not like this is an Oscar speech or anything, but when you called me many long time ago and said, "Hey, dude, I had a question. Just want to know. I'm thinking about doing a podcast. If I did it with anybody, it'd have to be you. And what do you think? Should we
Thank
do
you.
it?" And we're like, fuck it. Let's try one and see what happens. So we did that first one. We went, hey, I think we're pretty good. Let's keep it going.
What?
And so here
And
we are.
we're having a good time. But
Yeah.
I will tell you, Jeremy, I live in constant fear that one day you're going to go, I'm just not into this anymore.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be like, fucking, well, I'm not doing this alone. Nobody needs me just blathering on for an hour. And there's no one else I want to do this with.
Likewise, and me too, to the point where you're like, dude, it's okay. I'm gonna stay with this. Don't worry. I'm like, come on, Mark, we got to keep going, keep it going. Don't need to be a cheerleader. I'm with you, brother. We're in this together. Uh, I even had a client who actually listened to one of the Esterhaus episodes and was very um, interested in it and didn't realize we were even doing that. I had never even mentioned it to him. So it's starting to get to other people who don't even know it's aware. But we both did have to chuckle because even the client was going, yeah, your podcast, which is the responsible the ugly, the I'm like, oh fuck. We Mark and I, these two seasoned branders come up with a name that no one can remember. Fantastic.
Well, that's the romance part of it. You know,
Yeah,
that's the thing that makes it interesting.
that's true.
But again, I'm going to attempt to be king of the segues here for a minute. When we're talking about it, you mentioned it's not the Oscars. We're not thanking everybody. We're not, but the subject today that we want to talk about is something that has given me a lot of stress over the years. It's really been something that I've struggled with on the positive and negative side my entire creative career. And that is the subject of how you manage creative credit.
Yeah.
Because we all know that, by and large, uh, an ECD uh, is not only expected to and allowed to, but rightly should take credit for a lot of the work that comes out of an ad agency or a PR agency. The person who's leading the effort doesn't necessarily have to be the person who comes up with the idea and vice versa. But when it comes to our field, and we're primarily in public relations, where there aren't this critical mass of named creatives, and the industry itself is much smaller. I've always struggled with how to manage that kind of creative credit, how to talk about it, who to talk it with, how to bestow it. So it's something that I would love to talk to you about today.
Yeah, that's a great topic. And you and I have both been in the business long enough, and it still happens even today, right? And there's a difference about when it happens when you're a junior member to a team, or maybe a new member to a team, where this brainstorm ensues, or just a thought process ensues in a regular meeting, and you contribute something that is suddenly commandeered by the group and owned by one, right? And you're
Right.
struggling to show your value, whether again because you're new or you're young, and you want them to know that your thinking is relevant and prescient and all that other stuff, and you lose that credit. Uh,
Yes.
how do you manage that? What do you do when that happens? And in fact, I was just reading a statistic about 30% of people in the workforce claim that their ideas or thinking was either stolen or commandeered,
Mm.
by just not out of anything nefarious, just, just by the nature of the movement of a brainstorm, and everybody forgets whose idea it was to begin with. But about 30% of the people feel that. And more than half, 51% of them actually do something about it. So they are talking to people or saying, "Hey, that was my idea. I'm not sure. It didn't really reveal how they address it." But those are all kind of things I thought it would be good to talk about here for both junior people and senior people.
Yeah, and you know something, I know, and of course our loyal listeners know that a few months back we did an episode and on brainstorming and whether or not it still works and how you ideate with a group. And Jeremy and I, not like we're on opposite ends of the spectrum completely, but you know, I've always been the biggest fan of brainstorms and the stuff that comes out of them. In a large organization, a matrixed organization like we've worked in the past, Jeremy has, shifted that to a more singular outreach and asking people specifically to share their ideas, to think about this, and come back not in a group setting, but via email. And I think I don't know if you would agree with this. It's much easier in your way of doing things to single out people
Hmm.
for creative credit because just by nature of the channel that they're communicating in, you know exactly where, who, and what came from where, who, and what.
Well, that's a good point. I never thought of that until you just mentioned it, but I think you're right. And one of the things or the thing that I would do is I'd send each individual off. I'd identify the six or seven people I wanted in my brainstorm, and then I would send them off individually to ideate on their own. and then tell them to bring back their best two or three ideas, which they would
Hmm.
then present
Yeah,
to the group. So this did something, a couple of things. One, you're right. It's like, wow, I'm listening to you. This is your idea. You have presented it to me. And it also forces the junior team to understand how to package and present an idea or thinking. So there it's
100%.
it's preparing them for those moments when they're going to be standing in front of a client when they have an idea and they have to be able to articulate it. And in fact, what's interesting about that is I was doing some research on why this happens, why ideas are um, that they're either lifted completely and now I own your idea, or that notion of whose idea it was gets lost. And psychologists say that's for one of two reasons. One, the person who shared that idea to begin with didn't articulate it in a way that's memorable. It was too convoluted, stammering,
Right.
stuttering, and saying it's kind of like this. Well, not really, but maybe, and it's long and convoluted, and it gets lost. And someone else down the road goes, you know what I was thinking is click. And they're like, oh, yeah, that's a great idea. And suddenly
Yeah,
everybody loves it. I mean, so that's one reason it gets commandeered. The other
yeah.
reason is authority. No one really is listening to that junior person, perhaps, or the person who's not on the creative team, even. And so it gets it's brought forward with less authority, and they're listening. They're literally listening less. So those are the two reasons ideas can get lost in the shuffle.
Yeah, and it's especially difficult in that group brainstorm that I mean, you've been in a billion of them, as have I, and it's a couple of things. First of all, as a facilitator, my point of view has always been I'm not counting names and like how
Yeah,
many ideas did this person give and how many ideas here.
yeah,
And I'm not like writing people's names down next to the ideas they have because it is a group activity and it's in large part, it's a group exercise in contributing to the success of an idea because one person might have the spark, then another person might have the idea that leaps from that spark, then you have five other people individually, sometimes based on their individual expertise, to build on that idea. Oh, from a media perspective, here's what we could do. Oh, you know who would be a great spokesperson? This person. Oh, this is going to show up great on TikTok. Here's what we could do with influencers. And suddenly, and I'm not saying this is a bad thing, suddenly you find yourself, well, like, who came up with this? Well, the room. The
yeah,
room came up with this. And that's exactly how I've wanted it to work.
yeah.
I've I've been cognizant of the fact that the people who do come up with the original spark or the original stated idea feel a little disenfranchised by that approach because they're like, wait, I'm the one that said this. Yeah, other people built on it. And if you want people to continue to feed good ideas into the system, if you want people to participate, whether in a solo, brainstorm activity or in a group, um, giving people that credit and recognizing them for their contributions is super important.
Yeah.
Um, but like again, if you're in a room of say 9 people and you're having a brainstorm and 6 of those people in some way, shape, or form contributed to this, in quote, winning idea, well, fuck, what are you saying? Because what are you going to do to everybody but the 2 people, who didn't say anything in that moment? Or
Yes.
it's again, it's been problematic for me. I've always thought that this should be a lot easier than I'm making it, but that hasn't been my experience.
It's such a good point, dude, because if you think about it, the common belief and conviction is Steve Jobs invented the iPhone. Steve did,
Right,
right?
right,
He invented the
right.
iPhone, the iPad, the iPod, all Steve, sitting by himself in a room and toiling over this idea. And it drives me crazy. And he didn't do much to from what I've read, and I have read several bios on him.
Mhm.
Walter Isaacson's bio on Steve Jobs, for anybody who's listening, is a really good one, and that
Yeah,
was
yeah.
authorized. But and he did little to change that kind of impression. Now, Johnny Ive, who was the head of the Design Institute, he was much more cognizant of saying this was a group effort, everybody weighed in, and but it is kind of weird when you put forward a massive idea like that and suggest it's owned by one person.
Yeah. Uh, uh, and the way I've handled it in the past, when it's been a group brainstorm, is to seek out people individually, to like literally go and catch them in the hallway, or if they're in another office, like ring them up on Teams or Zoom, and hey, listen, man, that fucking idea was great. I'm sure it's going to be one of the ones that we share with the client. Great job, blah blah blah. But even then, in that moment, even if they feel personally validated by me, which is if you need to feel validated by me, that's a whole other set of problems that you have. But even if they feel personally validated by me, they don't get the community credit.
Right,
They don't get to show off in front of their
right.
peers and be recognized that way. And given returning to an old topic, given the number of fucking awards that we do, not only for creativity specifically, but PR in general, you know, showing a piece of hardware in front of your friends is a big part of our industry.
It is.
So it's I don't know what you think of that, but it's always been this tough balancing act.
It is. And you know what's really super difficult is when you're coming up in any business, but especially marketing, where they literally have a creative department, right? Um,
Yes,
and you want to posit yourself as someone who's creative. How do you do that? I mean, if people aren't realizing ideas are coming from you, then how do you get the chops of people going, that dude we need in this brainstorm, or make sure he's here or she's involved in this because they are prolific ideators? I mean, how do you get to the point where you got that, where you have that internal reputation that propels your career forward in that regard versus we don't know who it was, just invite these people and we'll figure it out and we'll brainstorm. That's all we need.
yeah,
So
yeah,
there's no assignment to people who are perhaps better at connecting dots and leading to ideas.
yeah, yeah. Because I've also always struggled with how to avoid being seen as kind of playing favorites,
Mm,
because there are people that are more creative than other people in your agency.
yes,
There's no way around that. So giving people an opportunity to be recognized for their contributions, even if theirs wasn't a winning idea.
yes,
It's like this is one of those areas, frankly, where I think it's okay to give people participation trophies.
yeah, it's
Because just showing up is half the battle,
yeah,
right? And we want to keep those people showing up. And it, I can imagine it would be tough for somebody. And I don't know. Tell me if I'm being an idiot here, but like if person A is this great creative or great ideator, who has come up with a succession of really fantastic ideas. If you're in the brainstorm, if you're a participant sitting next to that person, it's difficult to be in their shadow.
yeah,
And at some point, do you say, like, something, this is not really comfortable for me. I'm not going to come here anymore.
yes.
Uh, I feel like that's a problem too, no?
Yeah, there's two things that occur in brainstorms. I don't need to tell you this, but or not just two things, but many, and you've done plenty of brainstorms to know, but you get two dynamic or two broad dynamics there. One are the introverts versus the extroverts.
Yes,
So the extroverts, Stephen Hawking had the best quote ever: "Quiet people have the loudest minds." So it's not that these introverts don't have ideas or can't make connections. They're doing all of it internally, and they're not going to
right.
fight this extrovert for airspace. They just
Yes,
won't. It's not their style. So already you're handcuffing one intrinsic part of someone's DNA. They are by default being pushed aside.
yeah,
And the other thing that will happen on those occasions is those that are a little on the borderline. I don't know if I should share or not. If someone's spewing out ideas, you get what's called social loafers in brainstorms where they're like, they don't need me. Things are moving along. I don't need to contribute, and they don't. So those two dynamics is very dangerous because those two dynamics could lead to the same three people in every brainstorm coming out with all the
Yeah.
ideas because the others are being muted, not intentionally, but they are.
Yeah.
And that's why you and I both do writing exercises in brainstorms where you have everybody write, right? So you
Yeah,
capture
absolutely.
individual thinking. Yeah.
Yeah. The other thing is something that I stole from you completely.
Yeah.
I don't even know if you told me about this or I just saw you do it one day or whatever
Yeah.
it was. But and this is a lesson for those out there who have to deal with introverts. And there's this mistaken belief, that if you're in PR, well, of course you're an extrovert. That's kind of the
Correct.
job description, right? And nothing could be farther from the truth. I mean,
100%.
I'm more introverted than most people would realize.
Yes. Yes.
But the thing that you taught me, and the thing that everybody within the sound of my voice should do, if whether it's a creative brainstorm or not, if you have an introvert that you're dealing with in a group situation who stays quiet, who stays like kind of within themselves, um, you know, go to that person directly. I've said the words. I've said, "Hey, listen, whoever, Steve, I saw you doing some scribbling, and I bet you had some great ideas in there. And
Great.
I understand not wanting to share them in the room. Like I get it. Send them to me.
Great.
Send them to me and let's talk about them." And all of a sudden, you're throwing that person a lifeline.
Yeah.
You're giving that person a get out of jail free card. And
Yes.
what you're not doing, which is the worst thing you could do
Worst.
to an introvert, is try to force them to be an extrovert.
Yes. Yes. I've seen
Everybody,
facilitators.
let's look at Steve. Let's love
Yes.
Steve.
I've seen
The worst.
facilitators who think they're being helpful, and I cringe for the introvert or whomever because they're like, Steve, we haven't heard from you. I'm sure you've got thoughts. Worst thing you could do is put a spotlight on an introvert,
Awful.
because they will not be in that next storm. I guarantee you. Uh, which is difficult. But to your point about you're in public relations, I used to do this. I used to act out this routine for people who weren't participating. I'd call them my office
Okay.
and say, hey, or that didn't want to go to a client to present because they were too nervous. I would say, look, let me tell you what business you're in. You're in public relations, public relations.
Yeah.
And they were like, they'd be tilting their head and like, yeah, I understand. I said, so what did you think was going to end up eventually here in this business, right? Uh,
Right. Right.
so
Yeah. Private relations is a completely different
yeah,
industry uh,
private relations.
that you can get into if you want. I'll give you another example of this, not a creative example, but when I heard this, I was just absolutely horrified. Uh, I won't name the agency, Marina Mar. Uh, my wife Danny was there for about a year. It was absolutely not the place for her. And she told me once that at their weekly, this is 25 years ago. I don't think this happens now, but in their weekly all staff meetings, they'd have to go around the room and tell the room their best media hit of the week.
Oof.
Could you imagine
Wow.
anything more awful?
The
Like,
worst.
the
I'm just,
worst.
I just, and I've had experiences similar to that. And it's just like you get put on the spot. Talk about not wanting to go into work the next day.
Right, right. And it's like, is it especially the person next to you, just like in a brainstorm, is the person next to you is like, oh yeah, I get the front page of the business section of the New York Times, company in the headline, really positive article. Okay, Mark. Uh, well, the River Towns weekly Weekly Express has
Yeah.
gauged some interest, and
Yeah.
they said they'll get back to me within the next month or so. Like,
Yeah. I left
fuck.
932 messages. That's what I did. I mean, but I understand what, or maybe I don't understand what they're trying to do, but that's also so serendipitous. I mean, sometimes you get a great hit. Other times you can, and even media specialists will tell you, and sometimes you can go weeks without scoring anything. It doesn't mean you're crappy or you're not trying or you're just sloughing off your responsibility.
Yeah. And again, bringing it back to us, because it's all fucking about us. Uh, the same thing, you can hit a creative dry spell
Oh,
that
yeah.
lasts a week, 10
Yeah.
days, 2 weeks. And then, Saturday when you're at the mall, you're like, oh, holy, I got it.
Right.
But nobody sees that. Everybody
Yes.
sees those two work processes as the same.
That's right.
It's just that you're hitting your stride, you're hitting the mark when no one is around to see it.
Well, a parallel path to that. So let me just ask you,
Yeah.
to the topic we began with is, have you ever had, have you ever felt like an idea of yours was, will be polite, say commandeered or inadvertently, celebrated and you were left out there going, well, you didn't mention me. That kind of hurts, it's not, and it's not so much about ego, it's about showing value.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember the very first time it happened to me. I was not even a creative yet. I was an account executive at Ketchum, and our client was Tostitos, right? A Ketchum client for years. I think they still might be a Ketchum client. Frito Lay, great piece of business to work on. They did a lot of fun things. Uh, this is going back to, I believe, 1996 or 97 when they took over sponsorship of the Fiesta Bowl. And you think, Tostitos, Fiesta Bowl. Okay, that makes perfect sense. Let's do
Yeah.
that. And it was the game that was going to be played on New Year's Eve. Okay, so what do we do? And I had the idea. First, I jumped up and I'm like, oh, you know what we do? We have a giant jar of salsa at the 50-yard line. And at midnight, we pour a bag of chips into the salsa. And then this guy, Mark Malinowski, who was one of the best creatives that I worked with at the time, I was really junior. He was really good. He was really good to me. Um, he said, actually, no, let's simplify. It's not a whole bag of chips. We're taking one chip and we're dunking it in the salsa, and that's what we're doing. And I walked out of that room thinking, like, we just solved for it. This is great. And the next staff meeting I'm at, three other people took credit for the idea, and nobody mentioned me. Like I was not on anybody's
Yes.
mind. It was it was and remains painful. And to me, it's like there's two big issues that I have with it. First is that you want credit for your ideas, going back to how we started this, you want to be recognized for having a great idea. But the other part that has always been, listen, this hasn't happened like a million times, but when it's happened, when I came up with an idea, especially when I was junior and didn't get credit for it, saying that to somebody is really ick.
It is.
I would go up to my boss and, hey, actually that was
I,
my idea.
I've
He's like,
never done it. Never done it.
I've done it a couple of times when I was junior and I learned my lesson because nobody wants to fucking hear it.
No, no
Nobody
one's
wants
going
to
to
hear
believe
it.
it anyway.
No, but like I said, the first part of the feeling, oh, it's so disheartening.
Dude,
It's
I
so
got it.
awful to.
It
I
is
mean, have you? I take it because you say you've never done it. Obviously, it's happened to
a
you
lot,
at times in your career.
a lot.
Yeah,
And in fairness, I don't remember it so much. I remember feeling that way as a young account person. and knowing or feeling that my ideas have been lifted or again commandeered by the whole group, and I get lost in the shuffle, and that bummed me out. But I never said anything, and I especially never said anything about clients who did it, right? Because you just can't, especially with clients.
100%.
I just had a client do that, had an idea, and they're like, eh, they come back like a week later. What I'm thinking is blah. And I'm going, I just did, but instead you just go, oh, wow, kind of cool. That's kind of on the lines of what I was thinking. And I feed more into it that I had with the original idea.
Now, tell me what you, if you agree with this or not, because like you're right. Up until now, we've been talking about friendly fire, right? We've been talking
Yeah,
about like your own people
yeah,
not
yeah,
giving you
yeah,
credit for shit. We've both talked about clients in the past. You had that remarkable Hilton story
yeah,
that you shared. I've shared this happening with Ford
yeah,
and some other clients, and it's like only in at the time this wasn't how I was feeling. In retrospect, I can extract a compliment from that,
yeah,
because my idea was so good, they did it and they didn't give me credit, they didn't pay our agency, and that sucks. And no, agency president or CEO is going to say, "Oh yeah, as long as they're stealing our ideas, it means they're good and we're doing a great job." Like nobody thinks that way. But as a creative, I can kind of I can stop thinking about the injustice of it if I reframe it as just how good the idea was as opposed to what happened to the idea. I don't know if
yeah.
you feel that way or
Yeah, I do a little bit. And you know what makes me feel that way a little bit is, or actually a lot, is I think of all the times that there were ideas that weren't mine to begin with, but I built on them. I was the one presenting them, and the clients are saying that's a great idea. And by default, I'm presenting it. So guess whose idea it was? Probably Steve Jobs created the iPhone, right? Um,
that's
and
totally fair.
and I remember on one specific occasion, not in great detail, but I remember experiencing this when somebody had an idea, I built on it, and I went and told the client what we were thinking, and they said, "This is amazing. This is exactly what we wanted." And she said, "Was this your idea?" She goes, "This was definitely your idea. I can tell a Jeremy idea when I hear one." I'm like, yes. I fucking just took it. I took it and I hated. I hung up that phone, and the moment I hung up, I felt like shit. I'm like, for what? Because why? I don't need it. And I was at the top of my career at that time, and I didn't need it. I didn't need the love and glory. And it made me feel really shitty. And I never did it again. Hadn't done it beforehand,
Mhm.
never did it again. But yeah,
Let me tell you something. That's it's not unethical. It's not wrong in any way, but that's awesome for you to admit that because I understand how uncomfortable that is.
yeah,
I've never been in that particular situation,
yeah,
um, uh, but I can kind of just put myself in your place and understand how uncomfortable that must have
yeah.
been.
Oh, dude. And it was magnified because later on, and frankly, the idea, I don't even remember it, right? So how good was it? But I remember later on the client getting up with our Conan Wolf team there at this bigger meeting and saying, Jeremy had this amazing idea. And just like going,
Oh,
I wanted to just, and I'm like, well, our idea, and I'm trying to massage it, and it was like extra punishment for ever having said an idea was mine. It just
that's fucking harsh.
that is, well, you know what's interesting, dude, is I don't know if you knew who John O'Keefe was, but for 12 years he was the chief creative officer for WPP, and
I know the name. I've never worked with. I
yeah.
don't think I've met him. I've never worked with him.
And so he was the man. I mean, WPP, largest communications conglomerate at the world at the time. I don't know if they are now. They're experiencing some challenges, but at that time, we were.
Didn't
This
they
was,
just? Aren't they trying to sell PR?
yeah,
Right?
Well,
What's
yeah,
that?
they're selling off Burson, right? After telling us for the last 3 years since the merger how great Burson was, or how great this new entity was. But anyway, that's another episode. But so I'm on LinkedIn and I see this guy come out and say, and I don't remember the guy's name, and he's like, I remember when I had the idea of Keep Walking for Johnny Walker. And Keep Walking became this renowned campaign. I still see it. It's alive today. It's taught at universities for its originality and its brand essence, and it still lives on today in many iterations. I'm so proud to be a part of that and makes me feel good. John O'Keefe weighs in, huh, that's not how I remember it. How I remember it is that I was sitting in this meeting and I said, and another guy weighed in and said, yeah. And then I said this, and it was this whole thing. And these guys start arguing on this chain on LinkedIn. And so far be it
Wow.
from me not to parachute into controversy. So I just dove in and basically said, guys, are you kidding me? I said to John O'Keefe, I said, are you kidding me right now? You are going to try and claim a 25-year-old idea. I said, why don't you all keep walking until we can't hear your whining anymore? Oh my God. Or I said something, keep talking or something. I said, just keep talking. And they started attacking me and saying, yeah, what if you created? I'm like, oh, wah. I said, where are we? This whole argument erupts. And finally, this another woman weighs in and says, guys, please, this is all childish. So I'm like, perfect. Listen to our podcast. But even,
Oh my
dude,
God.
even 25 years later, this guy was taking issue with an idea he felt he had, he owned, or at least several people owned, and not the guy who was taking credit for it. So I found that interesting.
Mm. I uh, yeah, I don't know what I would do in that situation. I don't think I would challenge someone in public like that.
That's what I said. I said, this is a private conversation. You want to do that, go,
Yeah.
but don't posture in front of everybody else.
Yeah.
Well,
I would probably, just because I'm an asshole, I would probably go to certain people who had a loud voice, like online, people that I was connected with, and like, here's what that motherfucker said about my idea, like that.
yeah.
Like I would just sidle up to it, but I wouldn't. That's, but yeah,
Well,
yeah.
John O'Keefe had this snarky remark like, "Who are you? What poet did he refer to? I don't know, E. E. Cummings or something." He goes, "What are you, E. E. Cummings?" I'm like, "No, but I'm pretty sure he stole my ideas for all his poems." I was such a dick. But one of the things I did as part of this exercise this discussion was to look at how many people really got singular credit for on the marketing side, not the Steve Jobs level of credit, but on the marketing side, got credit for what was a renowned campaign. And I found one singular credit kept falling back to one individual, and that was Dan. Is it Whedon or Wyden? Wyden and Kennedy. Is it Whedon and Kennedy or Wyden and
It's a
Kennedy?
great question. I don't know.
And I've looked that
Who
up a million
cares?
times. Yeah. But anyway, Dan, let's say Wyden. Dan Wyden is is largely and almost singularly credited for Just Do It for Nike. And in fact, what the unwavering through line is on that is the way he came up for that tagline was he heard a story about Gary Gilmore, who had killed two people right after the death penalty had come back into being active in the US. And he was the first prisoner to be executed. And he asked to be executed by firing squad. And they put him in, this is in the, I don't know what year this was now, but they put him in front of a firing squad and they asked him for any last words. And he said, let's do it. And so Wyden heard that and went, just do it. And so it became their platform for
Was
performance.
he was he one of the shooters?
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah, he was there with it. But
Wait just a
yeah,
goddamn minute. That's brilliant.
that's brilliant. Hold my rifle. I got to go send this in. Uh, but no, but it's so much so. I think, and one of the things I looked into is what do you do? As you always say, you're like, when we do these podcasts, it's not enough to just simply talk about an issue. It's like, what do you do when it happens? And there were a couple things. One of the things, and I don't know if you have any things that you do or suggested other people do, or if it makes sense, but is when you have a great idea like that and you're in a group setting, send to the lead person a follow-up note so it doesn't look snarky or like you're fighting for. Say, one other thing, I know I tossed this idea out pretty quickly, but one of the things I didn't get a chance to say about it was this. And you build on your concept, positioning it as your concept. Or one of the other things I was thinking about when I brought that up is this, and you kind of pull back ownership of it that way. Is one of
Hmm.
the things you can protect your thinking. And the other way, of course, is to articulate it in a way that is easily digestible. So think about what you're going to say before you say it.
Yeah, I would say there are two things, and these are going to be really easy sitting here poolside for me to
Yeah.
say, right? I understand what I'm about to say is in a lot of situations just not feasible. I think one, if you are a more junior creative and you're either not getting the credit you deserve from your boss, or credit is being taken from you by your boss and someone else, you need to go work somewhere else
Huh?
because nothing's going to change there. That you have an ECD that is operating in what I would suggest is an unethical way. And this isn't about whose name is on the award or who's taking the ballot you said in front of a client when presenting it. If someone else is walking the halls of your agency and misappropriating the credit for your idea, it's time to go because that's just what is acceptable in that culture, and nobody should be working in a place like that.
And you're right. That does sound easier than it actually is, but it's absolutely true. And you know what I also thought is as I went through the ranks and finally became, the chief creative catalyst at the Conan Wolf person, whatever you want to call it, is what I've found is that the leaders that I respected even more were those leaders who gave that authority away. They're like, that was hers or his. And I'm like, damn, bro, that takes confidence when you say,
Yeah,
no, no, don't point the spotlight over here, point it over there. Now,
yeah,
listen,
but
I took that and I'm massaged it into this, but it started right there.
yeah, and that's the other side of the coin. I I I one time, and it was after I had left the agency, and this was a year ago, and this was the Munchie Mobile for Hostess, the cannabis idea that I have. I kind of claimed credit for that on LinkedIn again, well after I had left the agency.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay, aside from that time, I have never claimed credit for an idea to my bosses or to a client because if you are a senior creative and you're being judged on the specific things that you do versus how you are elevating the entire creative class
Yeah.
at an agency and how you are making everybody better and how you are if you need to be the rising tide that lifts all boats. If you're not being judged that way, again, it's time to go.
I
It's time to
agree.
go. I've
Yeah.
always the answer is always who came up with this, unless I can point to a junior staffer specifically, or it was my idea. It was a group effort.
So let me ask you this.
And
Let
go
me
ahead.
ask you this based on that, because I've had this challenge. So when you're putting your portfolio together, what do you say when they say, tell us show us your work? And so
It's
it's like,
always it's a judgment call. It's
Yeah.
the work that I have had the most impact or influence on. Or let me say it another way: if I can see my fingerprints all over this idea, then in that situation, I'll claim it as my own.
Yeah. I do the same.
Or more often than not, actually, as I'm thinking back to my recent, conversations with folks, what I'll say is, I led the creative for this.
There you go. There you go. That's good. I also use the phrase, I had the pleasure of participating or being on the team that helped craft this concept, something to that effect. But I like yours better because it adds, uh, because that's what, listen, when you're at the level of managing, and you know this more than anybody else that I know, when you're managing a team like that, you can't possibly be coming up with all the ideas, right? And
Right.
so
Right.
all you're able to do, because your time is stretched so thin, all you can do is sift and sort. You just go, this works, this doesn't, this is good, let's keep that one moving forward. And your fingers prints are on everything to a degree in terms of
Yeah.
keeping the train moving. And that in itself is an important part of the creative process, is evaluation and determining what moves forward and what doesn't.
Yeah. 100%. 100%.
So
Listen, the last thing I'll say is I would love to hear from you guys. I think we both would. Are there times when you've been robbed of credit that you believed was yours? That you were justified in raising stink. Have you ever raised a stink about it? What do you guys do in that situation? And how do you guys handle it? I would love to hear that at all levels.
And shameless plug, Mark, if anybody would ever want to steal our ideas for a price, Mark and I are hired hands that can help you out, maybe. So uh,
Absolutely.
we're here for you. I think that sums it up, Mark. This was another
I think we
good
covered it
session.
all.
I think we've covered it all. We've enlightened and elucidated and entertained people. We're not getting paid nearly enough to do this, but damn it, we got a growing audience now. I guess we can't stop the train, brother. There's nothing we can do.
That's
So,
right.
thank you,
Well,
Jeremy Baca with Ugly, Irresponsible, and Childish.
I'm Mark Levy. Jeremy and I risking our careers so you don't have to. We will see you next week.
Fantastic. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Mark. See you
Bye,
again, bro.
everybody.